My name is Rachel Pollock, and today I will be covering the topic of leadership styles, specifically transformational compared to transactional leadership. The specific paper I'm going to cover is from the Journal of Sports Management and was written in 1997. Alison J. Daughtry from the University of Western Ontario published The Effect of Leader Characteristics on the Perceived Transformational/Transactional Leadership and Impact of the Interuniversity Athletic Administrators, which examined the effects of various leadership characteristics on the transformational and transactional leadership behaviors of athletic directors and assistant athletic directors, as rated by their coaches. I now have a quick video for you to watch. It explains the differences and characteristics of transformational versus transactional leadership.
As an introduction, here are two common styles of leadership. One is called transactional and the other transformational. Once you've read through these two types, you'll be able to take a quick assessment in order to determine your own current leadership style. Whilst transactional leaders would usually work within boundaries and have set established outcomes, a transformational approach is more future conscious and dynamic. Transactional leadership. If you are a transactional leader, you'll be task and results driven whilst adhering to strict organisational boundaries. Additionally, you'd be motivated to reward people and evaluate performance regularly. You'll be focused on ensuring activities are completed efficiently and effectively. This style of leadership can become especially useful when dealing with strict deadlines and are constrained with resources. It maintains group dynamics whilst evaluating how each team member or employee performs their given task. Transformational leadership. If you're a transformational leader, you'll focus on engaging and enthusing employees, making sure they understand how their work will help deliver your vision within the company and the values of the organisation. As a transformational leader, you'll lead by example whilst inspiring your team to drive change and achieve a common goal. There are important differences between transactional and transformational leaders. There are important differences between transactional and transformational leaders. A transactional leader will understand how rewarding someone will result in more effort being made, whilst a transformational leader will motivate their staff in order to get the best out of them without having to constantly reward. Transactional leadership is more reactive to present concerns, whilst a transformational leader is more hands-on, and by doing this, creates higher expectations in their workers. A transactional leader will use methods such as carrot and stick motivation in order to control workers, as opposed to transformational leaders who inspire their staff in order to motivate them. In order to motivate, a transactional leader will set boundaries whilst producing rewards if goals are met. Transactional leadership is dependent on how well a leader is able to motivate. But transformational leaders have excellent managerial qualities, bond with their team, and build strong relationships.
Leadership has been around since humans could begin to communicate. It is now an important part of determining the effectiveness of an organization. This study in particular looked at gender, age, education levels, administrative experience, and athletic and coaching experience as possible ancestor characteristics that lead to leadership behavior. The study examined the effect of leadership characteristics and its impact of the leader behaviors of the coaches. As I previously mentioned, the study was looking at two different leadership styles: transformational and transactional. The transformational leadership is a newer style that approaches the view as embracing a greater vision of the organization and to perform and exceed expectations. Behaviors include charisma, idealized influence, inspiration, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration. Transactional leadership is when the leader exchanges rewards in turn for efforts. Transactional leadership is more of a traditional style that has been used for the past 4 decades, where behaviors include contingent reward, management by exception, active, and passive management by exception. There were previous studies that were completed where strong positive relationships were found when the coach perceived that the AD was more of a transformational leader, and there was a negative relationship between the coaches and the perceived laissez-faire relationship styles. It also found that younger coaches, managers, and athletic directors to be more comfortable with the transformational style of new leadership, while older managers would favor the traditional leadership style of transactional. Next, we are going to look at the methods of this study. First, we're going to go over the participants. The participants of this study included athletic directors and assistant athletic directors of 13 of the 17 universities that make up the OUAA, which stands for the Ontario Universities Athletic Association, and the OWIAA, the Ontario Women's Interuniversity Athletic Association, as well as 114 head coaches within those universities. The athletic director and the assistant athletic director, which I'm now going to be referring to as ADs for athletic directors and AADs for assistant athletic directors, all completed a survey of personal characteristics while the coaches were to rate their leaders using the multi-factor leadership questionnaire. This leads us to the methods used in this study, which I previously mentioned that Daughtry used the multi-factor leadership questionnaire, otherwise known as the MLQ, which was a scale used by coaches to rate the transformational, transactional, and non-leadership behaviors of their athletic administrators. This test included 78 items that reflected different leadership characteristics and were sorted into the 3 categories I previously mentioned, and each head coach would rate on a scale of 0 to 4, 0 being not at all, and 4 being frequently, of how often they observed their athletic administrators exhibiting this given behavior. The characteristics of transformational leadership were charisma, idealized influence, intellectual stimulation, and individualized consideration as well as inspiration. Transactional leadership characteristics included contingent reward, active management by exception, passive management by exception, and finally, the final characteristic of non-leadership was being laissez-faire. Next, we are going to look at the analysis and the results of this study. The study distributed the results of each category into 2 different groupings and then broke these down. The 4 categories that we are going to be breaking down are age, so we're dividing them into younger and older, under 45 years of age and over 45 years of age. 2, the highest level of education, dividing into undergraduate degree and a graduate degree. Years in current position, less than 7 years and over 7 years. And finally, total years of administrative experience is divided into less than 9 years and more than 9 years. The results were as followed among the ADs and the AADs. 1. There was a greater proportion of males that were older and females that were younger. 2. There were more men who obtained graduate degrees while females had undergraduate degrees. 3. The older ADs had more years of administrative experience than the younger ADs. And finally, 4. The ADs who had been in their current position for less than 7 years had fewer total experience. The study then looked at the perceived leadership, which were where the leadership characteristics were multiplied by the leadership factors. It showed that the female athletic directors were perceived to show more charisma, more inspiration, and more individualized consideration than their male counterparts, who were shown to use more passive management techniques. The coaches perceived that the young athletic directors exhibited more of a transformational leadership style, while the older athletic directors typically showed more of a transactional leadership tendencies, with the one style being of exception was inspiration. The greatest difference were shown between the young females and the older male athletic directors. The biggest difference being that the females were rated higher on each of the transformational leadership factors and much lower on the management by exception styles. The coaches rated that there was a greater perceived leadership effectiveness in the female athletic directors than the males, as well as the younger versus older athletic directors. There was also a perceived more exertion of extra effort by the coaches under the leadership of the female than their male counterparts. And finally, we are going to look at the discussion that was made after the completion of this study. The results here indicate that the female athletic directors and younger athletic directors were perceived to exhibit more charisma, more inspiration, and more individualized consideration, which are characteristics of transformational leadership, more often than their male counterparts and older athletic directors. It might not come as a surprise that the females had more perceived individualized consideration for their coaches, as it is considered a nurturing characteristic that is most often associated with women. The female athletic directors were also perceived to use more charisma, which might come as a surprise because it typically generates respect, inspiration, more than their male athletic directors. These characteristics are typically associated with self-confidence, nonconformity, and risk-taking, which is more typically associated with males. This finding could suggest that the female athletic director may produce a balance of masculinity as well as femininity to combine to create the great transformational leadership style. It was concluded that the male athletic directors steered towards a less involved leadership style than the female athletic directors. It was also concluded that the younger male and female athletic directors and the older male and female athletic directors did not differ. Therefore, the age-related factors were perceived to be a main difference in the study. It was concluded that the leader's education, years in current position, as well as the total years of administrative experience had little relevance in the study. The greatest factors contributing to the perceived transformational leadership style were age and gender, confirming that this is definitely a new age of leadership style. Finally, I am going to talk to you about my personal opinion and how I feel after having read this study. I was thrilled to get to read this study. It was a title that drew me in as soon as I read it, because it is something that I've been interested for in a while now. I think that women are starting to be seen as equals by their male counterparts, as well as those who look up to them as capable, driven, passionate, and innovative leaders. I think these findings show that the future is young, and the future is female when it comes to dealing with these new style of transformational leaderships. I would love to see more females in powerful positions, whether it be athletic directors, CEOs, or being the manager of their own business, helping to create, inspire, and lead a younger generation to great things while being proactive in their approach and leading with vision. Thank you for taking your time to listen and watch my personal opinion on the effective leadership characteristics in interuniversity athletic administrators. I hope you enjoyed, and thank you very much.